Hello Justin. It's been a long time since I made a response to you. And I could have done the video with you with the most uncanny valley humanoid in existence, but I think I'd rather do this one because, well, let's just say I'd rather do this than Lena Dunham. So go ahead, Justin. Let's do this. Let's tango.
I find it weird that rape is the only crime that people tend to get really skeptical about.
I know, right? It's not because we've had a load of false allegations recently, and it's a very hefty crime to accuse someone of, and it must be employed in order to find out the truth. I know, right, Justin? Hey? It's very surprising.
Like, you could come up to someone and say that someone stole your car or vandalized your house or something, and they'd be like, oh no, that's awful, I'm sorry, are you okay? But
I'm sure the same will happen with the other crime that you spoke of, but
go up to that same person and say that you were raped, and it's likely that their response will be more like, are you sure? Did you really fight it? Weren't you kind of asking for it?
I don't think you're being entirely honest with us, Justin. One could say that you were lying, because I've never heard anybody do that to anybody. Usually the response is, oh my god, are you okay? I feel so sorry for you. I hope you're okay. I hope you've dealt with the psychological trauma. I've never heard anyone go, maybe you were asking for it. Who has ever said that in the history of anything?
And this isn't okay. We have to believe survivors when they come forward with their stories.
No, we can't just automatically believe these people. Unless there was a conviction, how am I supposed to know they're telling the truth? I know what you're trying to do here, Justin. You're trying to say as if this person was raped in the past and people don't believe them, even though the person was and they got the person convicted, yet people aren't likely to believe them. I know what you're trying to pull here, because you're not actually trying to talk about the people like, say, Mattress Girl, or people like who accused Tobuscus of things. You're talking about actual people, aren't you? So you're trying to catch us out here with this bullshit, and it's not working. You have to be skeptical in certain situations. For example, if you're investigating it, if it's in the media, because you don't know who's lying and who's telling the truth until it goes to a court of law and they decide. Of course, even then, it's not necessarily 10 out of 10 proof that there was one, because there are people who have been pardoned because it turned out to be false. Or later on, after they've been dead for a number of years, it turned out it never happened. So even then, it's not clear cut, but you're not talking about that, so let's move on.
That act alone takes a lot of bravery and strength, and it's so harmful to tell a survivor that they didn't experience what they know they experienced.
The only time I've ever seen this happen, because actually I forgot to mention this, people, that what Justin is talking about is female rape victims, but he's not trying to say that, even though that's exactly what he is implying here. I've seen this happen to male victims. They've been told, oh, you were asking for it because you had an erection, even though we know that erections aren't necessarily sexual. There is something there that could happen. But again, I've never seen this happen to the opposite. But you know what, Dennis, you're right. It is horrible. But again, you don't seem to provide any evidence that this is what society does to people. You're just saying this happens, even though we know this is not society's answer to female victims, but it is to male victims. But hey, whatever, do go on.
So because of that, here are 10 lies we're told about rape survivors that are not true at all.
Ah, nice. They're all lies, are they? Are you sure about this, Dennis? Are you sure? Because something tells me that not all of them might be lies, might just be bullshit that you've come up with. By you, I don't mean like you individually. I mean, you feminists have come up with this bullshit. But hey, go on, Dennis, go on, Justin. Tell me. I'm just waiting for it.
Number 1, they're lying about being raped.
Nobody says all of them are lying. Some of them are lying. For example, Mattress Girl lied. Jackie from UVA hoax lied. Duke Lacrosse Girl lied. These people lied. I don't think anybody's saying they are all lying. That would be stupid and ridiculous and horrible, and would stop people coming forward with the crimes that were committed against them. But what also stops people from coming forward is people lying, and then people becoming more skeptical than they should be, because they will assume that they will not be believed. This already happens with men. Let's make sure this doesn't happen with women, because the examples that I mentioned are happening a lot recently in the media, and it doesn't look good, does it?
There are a couple of angles to this one. The first is that statistically, this is most likely not true. About 2 to 8% of reported rapes end up being false reports.
This statistic is simply not true. How do you know that it's 2 to 8% that are false, exactly? In the previous video where I debunked Lacey Green, I found that different variations of this statistic, and it goes right up to about like over 50%. Link down below. The true answer to this question is most don't even go to court or even end up with a conviction, simply because there is no way to prove the crime happened, because it's a very difficult crime to prove. So to say that 2 to 8% of them are false is is, well, false, because we don't know, really, because we have so many different statistics from so many different providers that really we can't trust them, can we? All we have to do is make sure that there is DNA evidence, and to make sure that that DNA evidence is provable, then we can be sure if the crime actually happened. This is why they tell people to report the crime ASAP. But of course, your lot would suggest otherwise, wouldn't you?
Which is lower than the 10% of false reports for other crimes.
And no, it's not, considering we don't actually have a verifiable, provable number to say that. Okay? We don't. We have no idea. Your statistics are false.
That's not to mention that a lot of what is considered false reports might actually have been real and the survivor was just pressured to recant their story.
What? Why? Why would the police do such a thing? Why? They are under increasing amounts of pressure, especially British police, to convict people and to arrest people of these crimes because they are horrible, heinous, and also they have a lot of outside influences trying to get them to do so. This is one of the worst crimes you could possibly commit. Why would they do this? Can you actually give me a real reason why people would pressure them to recant? Why? Most people want to see justice for this. What if these people are actually lying? The people who are accused of lying and the people who don't have any evidence. What if they actually are? I know most likely most of them aren't, but it's hard to prove. But come on, please, tell me. How can they be forced to recant?
The second part of this is it's just the more humane thing to believe someone when they tell you they've experienced a massive trauma.
What kind of wording is this? Humane to believe them? It's humane to believe them, therefore we should believe them? That's stupid. And what are we talking about? We're talking about people who have been. There was a conviction that happened a long time ago. Or we talk about people who are going through the courts at the moment. What's wrong with being skeptical of those whose stories don't add up? If you were skeptical of people who actually were, then you probably have a problem. But again, this doesn't say anything. You're saying a whole lot of words without meaning anything.
People's feelings, emotions, and well-being matter, and your default reaction to someone's pain shouldn't be to try to cause them more pain by denying what they're telling you.
I'm sorry, Justin, as much as I'd like to believe that people's feelings do matter, this is the real world, and the world doesn't care about feelings. It doesn't. Now, yeah, honestly, I care about the people who were actually rape survivors, but I'm not skeptical of them because they actually were. I know they were because there was a conviction, and it happened. It's verifiable. It happened, okay? But with people like Mattress Girl, no. Again, you're trying to put me into this trap here, and I refuse to be put into this trap.
Number 2, they didn't report to the police, so it can't be real.
I know what you're trying to pull here yet again. Look, the pattern is that as emerging slowly is that if they haven't reported it and then report it ages after the fact, usually it is fake. For example, Mattress Girl didn't report it until months afterwards. The UVA person didn't, neither did the Duke Lacrosse person, and as well as the Tobuscus girl as well. And nothing has happened. By that point, all the evidence is gone, so you can't prove it anyway, unless you get a confession from the person who did the crime. But just as you say that retractions can be forced, so can confessions. And a lot of confessions have been forced over the years. So what are you going to do then, Justin? Now, we're not saying all of it, therefore. We're just saying this is the prevailing trend, and it's usually the case. Sadly.
There are so many legitimate reasons a survivor might not report to the police. Some people don't realize until sometime afterward that what happened to them was rape.
Right, sure. So what do you mean? Do you mean they once had sex with someone consensually and then somebody told them that was rape and now they think they were raped? Or do you mean they didn't know that a certain act is deemed as rape legally or something? What does that mean? I've seen more of this happen from lads. They didn't know that what happened to them could be considered rape because usually, you know, they've been jumped into their heads that they can't be. And also, you know, they were intoxicated and the person doing that, you know, so you know how it works. I've seen many stories like this. But again, I don't understand where you're going with this. You're being vague yet again.
For example, if their partner is gaslighting them, that is, making them question their own memory and experiences, they might be too unsure about it to report.
Okay, maybe. But what if they're doing that to themselves? Overthinking it again and again and again? You can doubt yourself, let alone somebody trying to implant doubts onto you.
Others know that they could report, but they choose not to because they're afraid of the negative reaction they'll get from the police.
I wonder why, considering the amount of false allegations that have come to light recently. I wonder why. But hey, it's the police's fault because apparently the police negatively react to rape survivors even though they're actually trying to to get convictions, but it's a very hard crime to prove. But I'm sure you're going to expand on this further. Do go on.
Because, let's face it, a police station isn't the most welcoming scenario to open up about something like that.
What an utterly ridiculous thing to say. The police station should be the most comforting thing about reporting someone. Like, oh great, I reached the police station. The hurdle has been overcome. Now I just have to report it, surely? Just because it looks intimidating. Come on, that's ridiculous. You don't know what these people are thinking. And if they truly think this, then where has this come from? Because it's not come from their family, their friends, the media. It's coming from ideologues like you, saying that they're not going to be considered serious because of their gender, even though we know it happens more to men than to women, this thing. And it doesn't help that a lot of false allegations have been coming out recently, which further hampers these people. But you're not even mentioning this. You've not mentioned this at all. I hope you do, but I doubt you will.
And police officers are known for not knowing how to talk to survivors in a sensitive way.
Again, that is ridiculous. It is not their job to be sensitive. It's their job to be cold and calculating, because that's the only way you can prove whether a crime did or did not happen. You have to be skeptical. You have to ask the hard questions and the horrible questions. You have to. This is their job. If they were sensitive to everything, they would be doing their job wrong. I'm sorry, it's not their job to be sensitive.
Or maybe they just knew what kind of negative attention it would garner if they did report to the police, and they were afraid that people weren't going to believe them.
Well, where are the people trying to get them to report it and to get over these fears? Because if they don't report this person and it happens to be an actual rapist, this rapist will go on and rape other people. And if these other people don't report him, he will continue, or she will continue, because we forget that a lot of rapists are also women. But of course, you're not mentioning male victims. You're just implying it's female victims. And again, these fears are being implanted into some victims' minds because of ideologues like you saying that basically they won't be believed by the police. What you said just then is stopping them.
Or maybe they don't have enough evidence to convict someone in court, but they still know what happened to them.
That is one of the few things I've agreed with you on. Sometimes there's just not enough evidence, even if it did happen. And waiting for ages and ages and ages and then reporting it makes that even worse, because then the DNA evidence is gone. It doesn't last very long. I don't know how long it lasts, but I know it doesn't last that long. It's shockingly quick. DNA evidence from rapists. You have to report it as soon as possible. Preferably after they've left the area. You have to do that. And then you would have to go through the horrible process of rape kits. But when it's done, and you will most likely capture the person because maybe their DNA will be on a database or something. Or maybe they can match it to other women or men who have been raped. Although, let's be honest, the chances are that they might not be on a database. They might not even have committed other crimes. We don't know, do we?
Going to the police is not the one true indicator of if someone was raped.
That is one of the few things I've agreed with you on. Sometimes there's just not enough evidence, even if it did happen. And waiting for ages and ages and ages and then reporting it makes that even worse, because then the DNA evidence is gone. It doesn't last very long. I don't know how long it lasts, but I know it doesn't last that long. It's shockingly quick. DNA evidence from rapists. You have to report it as soon as possible. Preferably after they've left the area. You have to do that. And then you would have to go through the horrible process of rape kits. But when it's done, and you will most likely capture the person because maybe their DNA will be on a database or something. Or maybe they can match it to other women or men who have been raped. Although, let's be honest, the chances are that they might not be on a database. They might not even have committed other crimes. We don't know, do we?
3. There are discrepancies in their story, so it can't be true.
So despite discrepancies in a story, that still means they could be telling the truth. I could believe that, but it's still a discrepancy. And that can still, factor in the crime not getting a conviction. You do know that, right? And most likely, they aren't telling the truth if there's a discrepancy.
PTSD is a powerful, powerful thing, and it can really screw with your memory.
Right, so because there's discrepancies, it must be therefore that these people have PTSD, and that's why there's discrepancies. But I don't think that's probably why there are discrepancies in their stories. I think if you were actually raped, you would try to tell the truth as best as you possibly can. And usually, this happens, and therefore there is a conviction. If they also happen to have DNA evidence too, don't forget. But again, you're being very vague and trying to lead us into traps if we respond to this. I also take issue with your claim that it causes memory issues. I've not read this. I've looked it up just now just to make sure. None of my sources mention anything about memory issues. If anything, they vividly relive the experiences. That's what gives them the PTSD, that's what makes it worse, this is what causes them problems. They have vivid nightmares and recollections and flashbacks. I don't think they suffer memory problems, although that is a memory problem. It's not what they are referring to when these people suffer memory losses. I don't think you're telling the truth here.
After extremely traumatic events, it's incredibly common for survivors to misremember things.
Citation needed.
Telling a story different ways multiple times is not a good indicator of if their story is true or not.
Yes, it is, Justin. Yes, it is. If they tell the same story in different ways, those tend to be indicators that a person is lying and that they cannot be trusted. That's like one of the most basic psychological facts that you're taught in psychology, especially if you're a policeman, because you have to know if someone keeps changing their story, most likely this means they're lying. Now, it could be that they're lying about committing a crime, or hell, they could be lying about having a crime committed to them. If they keep changing their story, that's an indicator that they are lying. You might be right, but it's a very slim chance that they aren't lying. And again, you've not really shown me any facts to show that these people are suffering from memory issues, even though the issues that they get with their memory is an over-vivid reflection on it.
That is a perfectly natural response to trauma.
Again, citation needed on that. How do you know it's a perfectly natural response to trauma and not that these people are lying? Because we know from police testimony, from watching the fiction, from reading the books about forensics and how you interview people, if they change their story numerous times, that usually means they're lying. Are you making excuses for people like Emma Sulkovitz, or are you actually genuinely trying to tell us that these people might not be telling the truth and we need to be extra careful, or hell, skeptical of whether they're lying or not? I don't know where you're going with this, because it sounds like you're just making excuses for liars, and I hope you're not doing that. I don't think you are. I think you're just not very educated on this, or putting your point in a very good way. And that's okay. That's only natural. We're human at the end of the day.
Number 4, they could have said no or fought harder.
What does that even mean, and who even says this?
A lot of survivors report freezing up completely when it happens, like physically not being able to move or fight off their attacker.
Oh, so now I know what you mean. You mean if they can't fight off their attackers. Well, that's stupid. But then again, who says that? I don't know who says that. And you're describing people in shock. That's a perfectly natural reaction.
Think of it like a deer in headlights scenario. Your body just locks up and doesn't know what to do.
Yes, I know. Fight or flight. We know what these are. We're not stupid. But I was about to say that you're not lecturing people who have the minds of children, but you're lecturing to social justice warriors, and they do. So, yeah. That's completely understandable, Justin.
Consent isn't as simple as you can do whatever you want to someone until they say no.
Wait, now we're talking about consent? I thought we'll talk about whether people fight or not. Make your mind up on what this point is going to be about, Justin. Also, consent isn't complex. It is literally a matter of yes or no, really, and discussing with people what their boundaries are and stuff like that and what they're into, blah, 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 blah. It's not that hard. Usually, if, say, for example, you've just met the person and one thing has led to another, sometimes that's the only way of finding out if they don't want it or not, you know, until they say no. Then, obviously, you do something different and they don't complain or something.
Consent needs to be given affirmatively and enthusiastically. The absence of a no is not a yes.
Well, then what is it? You're just leading people into a grey area and you're scaring people. If it's not a no, is it a maybe? Again, what is it? It's a no? How can feminists expect to, tell us what consent is if they don't know what it is themselves, or are unwilling to tell people what this absence of a no is? Not only should consent be communicated that way, it should be clearly and without people making people second guess. Because what if there's something that you want to do and you're not sure because the person doesn't say anything? And then what you're doing could potentially be wrong. Is that what you're basically saying? That's just mad. And also, you don't necessarily need to communicate through words. Most of the way that people communicate is through their body language. So technically, you don't really need to say yes or no. Your body language can suggest things. But then, of course, there are people like me who are on the spectrum, and that doesn't always register. So what then? You make it even worse than it already is. You make it so overly complex that people don't understand.
Number 5, look at what they were wearing. They were asking for it.
Now, I've actually heard a Canadian police chief say this, and that was what sparked the slut walks, if I remember correctly. But it seemed to me like he was trying to say if you don't wear revealing clothing, you won't get raped. Like it's meant to be some kind of preventative measure. As much as he's an idiot and he's being wrong. He's kind of half right that that might entice them, but then again, you know, what do I know? I don't know. You could be wearing jeans and a jumper and they'll still do it. It might make it more difficult for them, but, you know, they still do it if they have to. They very much act like lions and other predators, well, which is why they're called predators, obviously. They go for what they think is the easiest target, and it just so happens to be that someone wearing a short skirt with no leggings or something is most likely going to be easy, especially if they're wearing stilettos, they won't run. I think that's what he was trying to get at, but because he was probably a little bit bigoted, he said it in a silly way, and it caused a hoo-ha. I think that's what it was, and I don't agree with him, but whatever, people, I'm just trying to remember it was a long time ago.
There is no way to justify this. Nobody asked to get raped.
You are absolutely correct. Nobody deserves to be raped. Nobody. Absolutely nobody. Nobody deserves that. It's a horrible crime. But again, not many people say this, yet you're trying to make it out that this is what society thinks, and you know damn well this is not what society thinks. But you have to push this agenda, so therefore people like me, just people on the street just think this, like, oh, they were wearing this, they deserved it. No, only a few sociopathic or very bigoted or very weirdly religious people really think like that.
People wearing skirts and people wearing sweatpants get raped. Your clothing has nothing to do with it.
Yes and no. You're right in the sense that anybody, as I said before, can be raped in whatever clothing, but because rapists act like, say, a lion hunting the antelopes and maybe the odd wildebeest, if they see someone who's, say, got an injury, they'll go after that person because they're slower, well, animal, but because they're less likely to run away. Just like how a human rapist is more likely to go after someone who may be wearing more revealing clothing, or if they're male, they might be passed out on a bed, therefore won't be able to defend themselves. They go after the easier targets. So it's yes and no, really. No, it doesn't mean that if you wear conservative clothing, you're not going to get raped. You can, but it's probably more likely if you're wearing revealing clothing that they will go after you because you present yourself as an easier target. It's not your fault, but it's just how they act. And there's nothing wrong with saying that because it is the truth. This is how they think.
Number 6, they just want attention. I've literally never understood this one because nothing positive ever comes from someone publicly accusing their rapist.
How about mass amounts of sympathy, people wanting to catch the person that did the crime, endorphin release perhaps? Because you do know that these people get a lot of sympathy and press publicity if they do so. Now, I'm not talking about the people who are actually being raped because I don't think they tend to go to the press first. They tend to go to the police first. I'm talking more about the people who lied, like Emma Sulkovitz. She did it purely for attention and to spite the person who rejected her, basically. We know this. We have the Facebook posts to prove this, but never mind, Justin, you're talking about actual victims. But then again, look, they don't do this for attention. Obviously, they're doing it to catch the criminal. And anybody who says they're doing it for attention is an idiot, because especially if they've got evidence to prove that they were, and then the person saying that is an idiot, right? Again, you're being vague on who you're actually talking about.
They're dragged through a long, painful legal process and usually smeared across the internet. Nobody gets famous as a rape survivor.
Emma Sulkovitz, the Duke lacrosse girl, Jackie, all these girls got famous out of pretending to be survivors. Now, you're probably right that people don't become famous usually through actually being them, but what if they try to, you know, combat the crime through charity work? Maybe then they become famous through it. But then again, these are people who were actually raped, and, you know, fame isn't something that they want. So, again, you're trying to be vague, purposely vague, and you're not going to catch me out. I know I keep saying this, people, but I'm trying not to get caught out, okay? This is what he's doing. He's doing it on purpose.
Nobody wants that attention.
Unless they're psychopaths like Emma Sulkovitz.
Number 7, they're too fat or old or ugly to be raped. There's no one type of person who gets raped.
Yes, I know this. You've already said that before when in regards to clothing. Things like that are usually said to spite a person about their appearance. They're not literally saying that they're unable to be raped. If someone is literally saying that because of that, they're weird. Usually it's just to insult someone's appearance. That's really what it is. You are trying to use this as a point, and it's not a point because that's not the intended meaning behind those words. Usually, at least.
Children, senior citizens, men, women, non-binary people, people of color, fat people, skinny people, disabled people, anyone can be raped.
Yes, I know this. You've already said that before when in regards to clothing. Things like that are usually said to spite a person about their appearance. They're not literally saying that they're unable to be raped. If someone is literally saying that because of that, they're weird. Usually it's just to insult someone's appearance. That's really what it is. You are trying to use this as a point, and it's not a point because that's not the intended meaning behind those words, usually at least.
Rapists don't pick victims based on how attractive they think they are.
Yeah, I do think that is involved. I mean, they are acting on their sexual instincts and their feelings. I mean, sure, there will be some who probably feel the urge so much that they don't. I'm not denying that, but some of them will. Some of them definitely have targets in mind. For example, if you're a paedophile rapist, you'll want to target someone who is a child, obviously, and maybe a child who looks a particular way.
Because rape isn't about sexual pleasure, it's about power and domination.
Yeah, I do think that is involved. I mean, they are acting on their sexual instincts and their feelings. I mean, sure, there will be some who probably feel the urge so much that they don't. I'm not denying that, but some of them will. Some of them definitely have targets in mind. For example, if you're a paedophile rapist, you'll want to target someone who is a child, obviously, and maybe a child who looks a particular way.
And besides, this kind of thinking is based on a very narrow view of what makes someone attractive.
No, this is based on you twisting what people say. This is just about insulting those particular people. They don't actually think that way. They know that anybody can be raped. They're not stupid.
In reality, attractiveness is extremely subjective, and projecting your ideas of attractiveness onto someone else to validate if they were raped or not doesn't make any sense.
See my last comment, people.
Number 8, they couldn't have been raped because they're a man.
Well, this is something I agree with.
Unfortunately, men do get raped, and there's a huge stigma around talking about it because of our twisted ideas of masculinity.
No, it has everything to do with the Duluth model, not really anything to do with twisted ideas of masculinity, actually.
An erection doesn't necessarily mean that someone is sexually aroused or consenting to sex.
This is true.
A lot of other things can cause that. Like I said before, people of any gender can be raped. Number 9, they couldn't have been raped because they were in a relationship with the person.
Only someone incredibly stupid would ever say that. Of course people in relationships get raped.
Partner rape is also a real thing that happens. Just because you consented to sex with someone once or twice or 50 times doesn't mean that you've permanently consented to everything with them in the future.
Yeah, you're right, but I don't think anybody has denied this.
Number 10, their story can't be true because I know they're rapist and they're a nice person.
Again, you are right, but then again, you are also wrong. What if the person is a nice person and they didn't commit anything? Again, it's 50-50. You just don't know until the evidence is brought forth.
The thing is, we have this myth about rapists that they're scary people with no friends who hide in bushes and attack people in alleys.
Yeah, I know. They're actually the minority of rapists. It's mostly people who are our acquaintances. We know this.
But in reality, rapists are often very charismatic people with lots of friends.
I don't know. They could be any personality. I don't think assigning one certain trait to this group of people necessarily proves your point. I don't really know. I'd like a citation on that.
In fact, people are far more likely to be raped by an acquaintance, a friend, a partner, or a family member than a stranger.
Indeed, this is true. They are more likely to be raped by a person like that. Yep, that is true.
So those are the 10 lies we're told about rape survivors and why they're not true. Please believe survivors.
No, don't listen to believe. Just depending on the situation, you can believe them or not believe them, or trust them or not trust them. That's what I'm trying to say here, people, throughout this entire video. Innocent until proven guilty as well is important, because without that, we wouldn't have a fair court system, and this is what videos like this are trying to get rid of.
We need to change the culture we live in to be one where survivors are respected and believed.
They are respected and they are believed, but we go overboard with it sometimes and end up with people like Emma Sulkovitz, and we end up with some people imprisoned for no crime whatsoever. You know, they didn't do anything. And then we also end up with like the man who was in the London Underground, and he walked past this famous actress and he went to court because she claimed he did something that he couldn't logistically do. She claimed that he sexually assaulted her walking past her, but he didn't. He had his hand on his back and his other hand with a newspaper in it. How could he do that? He walked past her in a second, yet he still went to court over it. That's the kind of attitude that needs to be changed. There needs to be a bit of a more of a skeptical look when it comes to, you know, proving it or not proving it. But if someone's told you and it's like a past event or something, I don't know how to react to that, I'm afraid. I've been trying actually throughout this entire video to try and think of words to describe that, because I know that's what he's saying, but again, what do I know? I can't describe what I'm saying. All I can say is it depends on the situation you're in.
And this video is a part of a series I'm doing for Everyday Feminism, a website dedicated to helping you stand up to and break down everyday oppression.
And that's why you shouldn't trust a word that he says. Anyway, people, that's the end of the video. He just shills after that, and it's time for me to shill. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. Write comments if I got anything right or wrong, if you agreed or disagreed, whatever. And if you like my channel, please subscribe. And you like it even more, you can always donate to the Patreon. Links are all provided in the description box down below. So until next time, I'll see y'all later.
you.